Hello, I'm Mischievous Mark Chinacchio, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Fantasy number 15, and all of the annuals, which I saith do not count.
Yeah, and I'm Dapper Dan Gavosden, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man and the Amazing Steel Silk, including the annuals, which I say definitely count. But for me, Amazing Fantasy 15 remains a fantasy. And fantasy is really kind of the realm that we're talking about here today on this podcast.
The co-host doth protest too much, in my opinion. Welcome to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for this review episode of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7.
If we were really committed to this show, Mark, we would be doing a live recording from medieval times or something for this episode. But if you do want to support us and follow along with us, and maybe we can make that a reality, you can follow our journey through Spidey's past, present, and future by subscribing to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app. And we would love it if you would leave us a review there. Preferably with as many stars as you can gather your spirits to leave us.
Yes, this podcast exists because of the support of our Patreon members and, of course, those reviews that people leave us. If you'd like to receive early reviews, seasonal episodes, exclusive podcasts, and artwork, and help us keep this podcast ad-free, please visit AmazingSpiderTalk.com and click on the big Patreon button to sign up.
Today on the show, Mark and I will be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7, Number 7. This issue was written by Joe Kelly. The cover and interiors feature pencils by John Romita Jr., inks by Scott Hanna, colors by Marcio Menyz, and of course, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. This issue was first released on July 2nd, 2025, which means I was on the 4th of July break and actually didn't get to read this issue until about an hour ago, recording this on July 6th. I don't know when you got it, Mark. You've probably been marinating on this a lot longer than I have, so we'll see. And in that case, why don't you give us a recap of the events of this issue so that I can kind of assure myself that I've got everything here.
Well, it must be a July 4th cookout, Dan, because that was some sausage making extraordinaire there. All right, well, we open on the rooftop with Spidey, Black Cat, and Hellgate. Spidey's spider sense isn't going off, but his common sense is. Hellgate is full of the thous and parlays, a little bit of a close talker, I think. And despite Cat's protestations, Spider-Man busts out some D&D language and seems to come to an understanding with his newfound friend until Hellgate gets impatient and goes off and absolutely obliterates all of the Hobgoblin's henchmen. Now, freed up from rum problems, Spidey and Black Cat have an entirely different and weirder problem on their hands. Spidey goes to confront Hellgate, who hits him back to the Middle Ages, and considering how many unusual circumstances Joe Kelly has put Spidey in before, I should clarify that I don't mean that he literally hit him back to the Stone Age or the Middle Age. Nope. Instead, it's a patented JR fight scene with a new villain, folks. Get that Moreland music going, people. Anyway.
Is that the Moreland music? I want to make it official, music.
Yeah. I mean, trademark.
Just wait until he appears in the Spider-Verse movies, everybody. You'll hear that kick into the soundtrack.
Yes. Anyway, meanwhile, we join Hermes Crenshaw. A name so bad, I don't even have a great pun for it. He's back from issue 1, the backup story. And he's arriving to Manhattan via megabus. He promptly checks his, what is this, a radio, a phone, a device, a tablet, whatever. Maybe it's his watch, considering how delayed megabuses typically are, and sees he's really here. And he yells at everyone to get off the bus, nay, get off the island of Manhattan. And clearly, it sounds like Hermes is another Fox News watcher who just saw Mamdani won the Democratic primary. Did I say that right, Dan? Mamdani. I'm like Cuomo. I'm Italian. I can't say that. So, Mamdani. Whatever. He won. Anywho, we quickly rejoin the Hellgate fight, and nothing Spider-Man is throwing at him is making a dent. Black Cat even busts out some semi-automatics that go brakakakata, Rakakakana.
Where did she keep that in her outfit? I gotta know.
I mean, I don't know. And now this must be the socialist hellscape everyone is crying about following the aforementioned primary. Well, at least Marvel's Manhattan hasn't introduced government-owned grocery stores yet. Peter flashes back to Uncle Ben and he gets some sage advice. He might want to run. Oh, and then we check in on J. Jonah Jameson. Well, that's nice. I mean, you know, he's still here. Then it's back to Spidey's brawl with Hellgate, and he hasn't mustered much of an offense. After a few failed attempts, he's finally able to lure Hellgate away and get a shot in. And then we flash to another new player on the field with a futuristic costume and a Captain America-esque shield. And I'm guessing this is where Dan tells me about some alt timeline character from a solicitation I don't remember ever reading about, because who cares about solicitations? Dan, take it away.
Honestly, you pulled a Hellgate and beat me to the punch here, Mark. I don't know anything about this character, but your theory is as good as mine.
All right, I love it. Okay, so Spidey and Hellgate are in Central Park, and I still wonder if anyone from the Spider office has ever visited Central Park, even at 6:16 in the morning. You know, like there's nobody there. There's like random canisters of coolant. Like what? Where is this Central Park? Like, can we like? Have you watched a John Wick movie? Like they I mean, that's Central Park. This is like. I digress. So Spidey swings around a couple of barrels of coolant like you find in Central Park and freezes Hellgate solid. Spidey celebrates the victory, but naturally, Hellgate thaws himself out and is psyched up to finally have an opponent with some fighting in him. The prince that was promised. Are we getting a Game of Thrones crossover? I hope not, Dan, because I didn't watch that show after season 1. Don't at me. And that's where we end for now.
Wow, Mark, you really gave up quick on Game of Thrones. You had to at least make it through season 4 to get the prince that was promised.
When I don't like any of the characters, it's just hard for me to watch a show for an hour a week. Anywho,
unless they're Italian, right? Like The Sopranos, I'm sure you went all the way through.
Okay, let's not make this a racial thing, all right? I'm not perverted. I'm Italian, all right? I mean,
all right. So, you know, Mark, in that I just read this issue shortly ago, and I think I've got a pretty solid grasp on it either way, but as much as I could, my first kind of reaction was like twofold. Boy, yes. What a normal, like, you know, sort of like issue of Marvel team up or Spider-Man.
Sure, yeah.
And like in that it's got the standard like setup of like, hey, here's another guy and we're going to have a misunderstanding and fight. And Spider-Man whips out science and tries to defeat him. That stuff is all fairly normal, but it's like the little details around the edges that are deeply strange and kind of mixing in the sort of like, I made the joke about fantasy up at the top of the show. Like we are getting, you know, for as much as Spidey jokes about like Rings of Power or Game of Thrones or, you know, a whatever Morrowind crossover here, you know, like this is fantasy getting in my Spidey comics. And, you know, we've had some of that, I think, in recent years. Although the symbology thing was much more like science-based fantasy than anything else, if you really want to call it that. So, this felt like something wholly different, and I'm still trying to grasp it. You know, it's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but I'm willing for sort of an intro chapter here to kind of go with it. How did you feel by the conclusion of this issue?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, what a normal weird issue, I guess, would be my my high level summary of it. I mean, it's like there is some very strange things going on. A lot of emphasis on time. You know, like I don't quite remember. I mean, look, I got to assume that a lot of Spider-Man adventuring happens at like the wee hours of the morning, but like this comic makes an emphasis of it, which I think is worth noting. You know, 5:15 in the morning, 6:16 in the morning, you know, like, okay.
Even you know, the Jonah scene, like for all the little weight that scene carried, like a big part of it is him seeing an explosion from the fight and saying, oh, the sun is rising in the wrong place. So like
Right.
even there, it's emphasizing the sort of dawn, and Hellgate is like all about like the speed via which he needs to communicate or parlay whatever message or agreement they come to. So there is some real emphasis on time here.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I at the same time, like, this was kind of it was kind of the Moreland template. Putting aside my awesome soundtrack that I created for
Yeah.
it a few minutes
How
ago.
could we put it aside?
I know, but try to. It was kind of following the Moreland template, but at the same time, like, it was, like you mentioned the Marvel team up kind of analogy, like the unwilling partners or the unlikely alliance and stuff. So like it, it managed to kind of surprise me in its own way and like kind of swerve me, but like it still at the same time became like the standard David and Goliath, Spider-Man versus a new villain, trying to figure out what are his weaknesses and things like that. So like, a lot that was both familiar but also very weird and different, if that makes, I don't know, like it very much a tonal dissonance, but not necessarily in a bad way for me.
Yeah, and when we get to later in the episode and talk specifically about Hellgate, I really want to talk about like how much I like the sort of subversion that the character has specifically to this book's marketing. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you mentioned, like the specific timing, because I think there's like some other really strange kind of formal elements to this comic that we haven't seen in years. And I'm specifically talking about the sort of like omniscient narration from the sort of like the writer. And I don't think that the narration here is quite as writerly as like other writers of this book have been, dating back to Stan Lee's isms and all the way through like the sort of brooding psychology that someone like JMD brought to it that aren't specifically Spider-Man's word balloons or not word balloons, thought clouds or the sort of like boxed narration. We get like these sort of the narrator asides in this, the sort of like appearance of Hellgate in Manhattan, and enters the fray, and we've got a new player. It's not very like overwritten or very detailed or poetic in its writing, but I was trying to think of the last time that we got this sort of like character free narrative in an Amazing Spider-Man comic. And, I could definitely be wrong about this, but like the last time I think it was like used regularly, and who knows if it will be used regularly here, was Volume 2's Mackie Byrne run. Like I think JMS came in, made it all Spider-Man's voice, and no one has ever returned to it since. What did you think when you saw this on the page? It's a weird, even format-wise. Like it's kind of like italicized and like, I don't know. What did you think when you saw it?
I mean, it was definitely different. I didn't even like make the pull to Mackie Byrne, be totally honest with you, but like it definitely feels a little out of place, but like there was clearly something going on a and not that I pay attention to many solicits, but like we know we're gonna get a rather bizarre cosmic style story in a handful of issues, so like it just feels like we're setting something up from a multiversal angle here. So like like the way you were describing kind of like the matter of factness of it, like just thinking on it, I was like, is this like The Watcher or something? But like, I don't know if it's necessarily that, but like it's akin to that.
Did you sense like a character voice behind it? Because that's the thing, I don't think I felt that, but it feels like something that would be a character voice given the sort of modernity of how Marvel comics are written and handled.
I feel like you kind of, I mean, look, like, and I'm not trying to be snarky here, but like in this day and age of the Spider office. I mean, it could just be an editorial oversight, and we're never going to see this again. Let's put that possibility on the board.
Sure.
I mean?
But it is specifically designed.
It does feel intentional.
Yeah.
And given how unfamiliar it is, to your point about, based on the last 25 years worth of comics, you're kind of like, is this some kind of omniscient narrator? Is this some kind of, and is this a specific person? I mean, could it just be the voice of God and we'll never see who's saying this? Sure. But I mean, that would be pretty boring. Why are we doing this if that's the outcome? And again, it could just be because. But
I mean, it doesn't feel like Joe Kelly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Stan Lee was clearly Stan,
Yes. No, Joe. I mean, if it was Joe Kelly, there would be far more pop culture references, which, we got with aplomb here from the voice of Spidey, but not from the voice of the narrator. So it feels both too specific and not specific enough to be something, but we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of what it is, like, to me, it made me feel, your point, that it's whatever story we're entering here is something on a scale bigger than your typical Spider-Man comic. And it immediately sets it aside in whatever way. Maybe it could have, leaned into whatever voice of that a little bit more to make it more specific, to your point. But at least made me feel like that way, like we're really out of our territory here, even format wise, given the past 25 years, as you said. And also, it's something from another realm, like another style of storytelling invading here, which I think fits with whatever Hellgate ends up being. And I think we got enough clues here to at least assume that Hellgate is not of standard Marvel Comics universe fare. And we can get into maybe some of those details in a bit. But, it's just weird seeing an omniscient narrator return to this book that's not Spider-Man, because, we did have omniscient narration in, the Nick Spencer run, but we pointed out how incredibly weird that was because it was Spider-Man who was the omniscient narrator.
Right.
And we never really got any rationale for why that choice was made.
Yeah. I do feel like when we did get actual Spidey narration, it was kind of in line with what we had gotten from Kelly over the last, handful of issues. The pop culture references, the D&D stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we're definitely leaning very heavily into the joke when Spidey is with Black Cat, he's just a big dork who's just gonna make dorky things, and I mean, okay, I never quite gathered that from their relationship, but okay, I mean, I don't, it's not wrong in my mind either.
Yeah,
I mean? I mean, Joe, it sounds like Kelly is the first one who's just gonna play with that, which is fine. And then we kind of got this I feel like Kelly is kind of I interwove these flashbacks with Uncle Ben and Aunt May really well in the first full arc, so let me go for it again, but it didn't really feel as organic or developed here. I mean, I don't know, did you have any thoughts on the Uncle Ben flashback with there's a time to fight and there's a time to run? I was like, okay.
Well, it kind of expands into that old running joke that we used to have at the end of our shows, that Uncle Ben has done literally everything and he can be anything, which in this case he's teaching Peter to box,
right.
And granted, this could be a great follow-up scene to what we saw in the previous arc, where Peter gets basically his butt handed to him by these bullies. The follow-up could be, okay, well, Uncle Ben's going to step in and teach him to hold his own. Cool. Right. That makes sense to me. It just felt randomly kind of included here. And I reread it several times, because it just felt odd to me in the moment. And I almost wondered if he was going for a joke there, a visual joke of there's a time to stand your ground and a time to run, and then the next panel is just Peter running, you know? And if so, I don't feel like JRJR matched that, but like it's hard to know the intention because it is so random.
Yeah, I didn't get that from it. Like I just felt like, if anything, again, I felt it was more like, oh, you know, this was a device that I used really, really well in the first arc. Let me, you know, maybe I'll go to the well here, but like it this story thus far, and that's not to criticize this story, but this story this far isn't as, it doesn't have the emotional texture that the first one did. So like kind of bringing in like the Uncle Ben. I mean, you could very well be right, and I mean,
I don't know. I could be just making that up too. Yeah.
I mean, the point being like, if you know, if you're right here, then yeah, we just missed the joke, and like, you know, not for nothing. I mean, you know, like I think we talked about this a little bit in the last issue. Like as I thought like the fight sequences with Spidey and Hellgate from Romita were really strong, but like, you know, Pepe Larraz was just like bringing it on so many levels, and I think like his style really allowed those more intimate emotional scenes to resonate more you know, potently. And Romita's art's just not doing it here with like those flashbacks and stuff like that. It just like it feels a little more of a kind of a throwaway scene here. So it could just be the Romita of it all. It could just be the joke that didn't land, or it could just be the fact that Kelly went to the well one too many times, and just the overall potency of the scene just didn't have its moment, you know?
I also think that JRJR is maybe too old school for the sort of modern storytelling technique that sort of weaves in and out of like a bunch of different stories, right? And so like where someone like Pepe Larraz would find a way to do that like itsy bitsy fight in the shadows, you know, thing with the flashback of, you know, Peter and Brian having their first beer. Like, I just can't imagine JRJR doing that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like, you know, a 9-panel grid guy, you know, like even if he's not doing 9-panel grids, you know,
right.
Which is not to say that 9-panel grids can't tap into that stuff, you know, in the same way. I think Ditko got into the sort of like psychological realm with his 9-panel, you know, spreads often. But I do think there's a sort of like old school structured, you know, layouts and stuff that makes it a little bit less, you said emotionally textured. I think that's really good, but also like less kind of loose in the way that like, I think Joe Kelly's mind kind of works as he's kind of like dipping in and out of psychology and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think the art here, and we'll definitely talk about it, I think it's decent, but I think Hanna's inks are still fairly loose, and it seems rushed in some places. You know, but you still get the sort of like formal, structured style of JRJR that knows how to tell a story, even if there's stuff that's a little bit wonky, and like I feel like Hellgate's size changes every time we see him. But you know, it's a very solidly crafted comic. We were just getting used to Larraz giving us maybe like the most attractive thing we've ever seen in the pages of a Spider-Man comic. But as back to Joe Kelly's writing, I really dug again, and you know, this might sound like, you know, like faint praise or whatever, but seeing as so many writers didn't do this for such a long time, I loved how much this really kept us focused on Peter's thought process as he worked through the problem. You know, like, what's the next thing I'm going to try on this guy? You know, like, okay, that didn't work. Like, you know, like, here's some other smart thing. Like, you made fun of the coolant in Central Park, and I agree, it's kind of funny and goofy and whatever.
But it was a good solution. I mean, it just wasn't. It was just the randomness of like, let's do that in Central Park.
Yeah, agreed. But I also like appreciated it's like maybe he showed his homework a little bit too much, but like it feels like Joe Kelly like did some research and discovered, oh no, this is a real thing, I swear. You know. And I'm willing to believe him, you know, to a certain extent, because like it feels like something Peter Parker would know about, or frankly, Mark, your son who's obsessed with New York infrastructure would probably tell you about if you asked him about it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. This is a very much a well actually kind of a thing here, but it still feels a little far fetched for me.
What do you think in terms of the writing around like the sort of silly mythology stuff? Like I think we made fun of like Wyeb and all that stuff for the sort of, the Scarlet Woman or whatever it is. Do you get that kind of silliness here?
Well, if you're ready to do it, Dan, I feel like we can't talk about that without just talking about Hellgate overall.
Let's do it. Let's talk about Hellgate overall.
Because like I think everything about Hellgate is both kind of like I was expecting the knockdown drag out fight that we ultimately got. Like I was just like, it's a new villain. It's John Romita Jr. We're going to get the, like I can't beat this guy kind of like totally, like no surprises there. And yet I feel like the journey to get us into that sequence was very unexpected. And I think part of it was just like, first of all, like, because, the character had appeared, both in the backup of ASM 1 and then, a little bit in the last issue. But like we really, correct me if I'm wrong, we really didn't hear him talk all that much. It was just kind of like, we knew he was kind of out of time, but I didn't expect him to actually talk like he was from, 1250 AD. Here.
Yeah.
So like,
or directly from Asgard.
Right. Well, right. Yeah. That's true. I don't know if it's given it's Marvel. I don't know if this is supposed to be from like Asgard or out of time or what. But like it worked in its own way because like it's kind of goofy, but also the threat level was high. But like it felt contained in its own weird Spider-Man way. I don't know. None of this bothered me. and I'm normally one to be like, oh God, we're talking mumbo jumbo and secret scrolls and stuff. You would think that like I would like hate this, and I didn't. Like I was just like, okay, no, this is like kind of working in again, the Marvel team up analogy is so spot on to me. Like this feels like if I read this story and like in a binge on like Marvel team up from like 1977, I'd be like, yep, this tracks. You know what I mean? Like, cause that's what it felt like. This felt like Bronze Age era Marvel team up.
Yeah. Bill Mantlo and his like crazy ideas. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. 100%.
I agree with that. And I think the key is how Spider-Man reacts to it, which is like to kind of make fun of it. And like, like it's not even that Spider-Man is a fish out of water. It's that Hellgate is a fish out of water. And that makes it kind of funny to have the kind of like role reversed in one of these kind of swap overs. And it succeeds for me too, at least so far. In a way, I don't know if you read JMS's recent Captain America run. Did you read that?
I have not. I did pick up the new whatchamacallit, Chip Zdarsky one, but I have not read it yet.
Yeah, I haven't read that either, but I've heard mixed to positive things about it. But the first arc of the JMS run of Cap is a pretty solid arc you'd expect from like JMS. But the second arc like throws Cap into like the realm of mutants, and not just mutants, but like mutants that JMS has like made up and come up with a whole new backstory for that like is completely counter to the rest of the Marvel Universe's like mechanics of mutants. And he even creates a new version of Death. And it just doesn't work because Captain America doesn't bat an eye at it. He just kind of goes with it, and it shifts into a realm deeply outside of Captain America's territory that, but like the character doesn't react to being a fish out of water in the way that, say, like Rick Remender wrote him when he went to Dimension Z, right? Like, and that's meant to be a very bizarre Captain America story, and I would say even JMS did with like Ezekiel and Moreland and all that, where he wrote them like they shouldn't really be in this comic, and all the totemic stuff. And here I think that's true too. Spider-Man doesn't just go along with it. He's like, this is deeply weird and not something I should be touching. And therefore, it can be as strange as it needs to be. And it's not super self-serious. I mean, maybe Hellgate is, but the book isn't self-serious about it. Whereas I think
Right.
like the Wyatt stuff, like it was fine when it was lightly touching Spider-Man's world in the Brand New Day thing. But when it became integral to understanding Spider-Man comics in that it impacted Mary Jane and all that, the silliness of it suddenly became something we should take very seriously. And I think that's where there was that sort of like break. And I just don't feel that here.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is not self-serious at all, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it starts with the very first, like, you know, Peter tries to like kind of get on his level here, and Felicia's like, no, don't. And he's like, no, I'm cool, I got this. And like, to me, that kind of disarmed me right away in a good way, because I was just like, all right, like this is like, again, like we talk about the subversion. Like I was fully expecting this to be like, okay, well, you know, like, because this is what we've gotten for the last decade plus of Spider-Man comics. Like, here's a threat Spider-Man has never seen before.
It's the new Moreland.
You know? Yeah, it's the new, you know, Goblin Queen or Queen Goblin, whatever. Or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's I feel like anytime we have a new character like this that gets introduced, it's like, you know, never has Spider-Man ever faced a threat quite like this before. And you know, like, when you see Hellgate's power set, it's kind of like, oh wow, that's impressive, you know what I mean? But like, you know, and there is those elements, but like, the introduction is more just like, hey, you know, oh, this guy's a little kooky. I'm gonna try and like connect with him to disarm him a little bit, and you know, that goes awry. But like, there's plenty of like good throwaway lines here, like the you know, calling Felicia a handmaiden and him being like, well, she's not my handmaiden. We're you know, like, there were some legitimately funny scenes here. Like,
I like that no one foretells me anything line.
Yeah. Like Kelly's having fun here, and the comic's having fun. The comic is just having fun with this. And you know, like, when Hellgate goes and blows up all the goons, like, I do feel like the both the threat and the gravity of what he did is like, it's definitely like oh crap.
Yeah.
Like, what did he just do? You know, and he's like, you psycho, what did you do? You know what I mean? Like, so like, it's not like we're completely dismissing the threat level here, but like, we're poking fun at it. We're not taking it too seriously. We're kind of subverting our expectations that this is just going to be like, you know, the biggest, most traumatizing threat Spider-Man has ever faced before. I mean, you know, like,
I actually like that Nick Lowe did that for this, like, had been hyping it up so much, because it made the subversion all the better. It felt like someone like kind of let the gas out of like Nick Lowe's tire, you know, in a good way.
Well, right. I mean, I was just, he might be like, look, I'm not on Twitter anymore. So like, I don't know what Nick Lowe was really doing. And I don't read solicitations, as we constantly joke
even
about
just
here.
in this book, like the backups are like, wait till next issue. It's going to be a slobber knocker, you know, like, yeah.
Sure. But there was nothing about it in the page of this comic that made me feel like this was quote unquote overhyped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in terms of what I was reading on the page, it was like, here's a new villain. He's kicking Spider-Man's butt. Like,
yeah, that's true.
That's very apparent. But like, at no point also was there like, you know, like, Spider-Man was kind of like, okay, oh crap, what do I do? But like, it wasn't also just like, I'm gonna die, you know, let me make my last call to Aunt May. Not that I'm making fun of that scene from Moreland, but like that's an easy well to go to if you want to like, oh, we got to hype this guy up and make him seem like he is like, you know, the end all be all, and like Spider-Man can't overcome this. And they didn't go there. And I kind of liked that there was restraint here. I don't know. Am I being like overly apologetic for this comic?
No. But I also think that there's that added wrinkle of like, this is clearly like a misunderstanding, or not even that. There's another motive going on here that makes it interesting too, which is, you know, the use of the word parley, right, or parlay, you know, and it's clear that, you know, whatever Hellgate understanding of who Spider-Man is in relationship to him, whether it's a misunderstanding and he's just slotting Spider-Man into some other role that he shouldn't be in, or whether Hellgate has a better understanding of the universe than Spider-Man does, and his new place that he'll find himself in. You know, the book is about him testing Spider-Man's limits to see if he can really kind of stand up to the challenge that whatever it is that's coming down the pike for Spider-Man, and will, I guess, kick off in 975. And all of that is, you know, deeply interesting and adds, you know, a wrinkle to this. Like, you know, parley is usually a term associated with like two sides of a war or conflict, you know, settling a disagreement through a conversation. And we don't really know the wrinkles of what that disagreement is, if it is a disagreement, but like clearly Spider-Man is going to find himself mixed up in something much larger than what, you know, he's faced before in some regard.
Yeah. No, definitely. Now the fight itself, I mean, like, I feel like we had some fun moments in terms of, I mean, I did like, you know, again, joking aside about the setting, like, you know, the Freon or the coolant, if you will. I thought that was clever. The web bombs or bombs or, you know, whatever your pop culture reference du jour is.
Is that another Scott Pilgrim reference? I can't tell.
Bombs, I think, are Mario Brothers.
Well, yeah, sure, but like but the band in Scott Pilgrim, they're the Sex Bombs.
Oh, I mean, well, if it's Scott Pilgrim via Mario.
Sure,
I mean,
yes,
like,
of course.
You know, like, you know, we're not gonna say like, you know, Mauser and Wart or Scott Pilgrim. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm just like,
we went with Super Mario Brothers 2. Way to go.
Well, Bomb, I think, was introduced to Mario too. So there you go.
Oh, that's fair enough. Okay, fair enough. Look at you.
Look. I got my NES in '88 when Mario 2 was, you know, top of the mountain. So there you go. You know, you were probably still in diapers when I had my. It is
probably
NES.
True.
Okay. Anyway, this was a good fight, but I mean, there was nothing like extraordinary about it. I don't know. Like I guess I'm just spoiled with Loraz because I'm just like, oh, okay, good old JR doing his thing again. But like, there was nothing that like blew me away on this.
No, I think we're also spoiled with JR. Like I think we got much bigger, you know, brawlier fights, you know, back in the Wells run, you know, like I also think like, again, I don't know the circumstances of the creation of this issue. And so I can only speculate, but like knowing that Scott Hanna was undergoing like cancer treatment and stuff like that, like I just felt like the art here was much more uneven than even JR a year ago, you know, like, or 6 months ago, whenever it was we last had him, you know. It feels less refined. And maybe that's a pacing thing or whatever, you know, but it felt looser, and also there are like big portions of it, like the bit where Hellgate is peeling himself out of the webbing and walking through the fountains in Central Park. Like the inking style just feels entirely different in that sequence, and so there's just less consistency, I think, than I'm used to, you know, in even Scott Hanna's inks. So I don't know. I just felt like even compared to the last issue, I thought this had like a little bit less polish than I'm used to in a JR comic. And people already kind of criticized his work for being not quite as polished. Obviously, the storytelling is still really solid. Like, Guy knows how to pace a comic and really make the stuff hit. And maybe, you know, like we're gotten too used to him being back on the book, but this one just didn't pop for me. And I've also just seen him do this scenario visually before. It's the writing that brings the uniqueness, I think, to what this comic is doing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess for me, like, I don't necessarily think that there was anything wrong with the writing. I mean, like,
the art, you mean?
No.
Oh.
I mean, like you're talking about like the writing, like kind of synchronizing with the art. You know what I mean? I guess what I'm trying to say is like Romita was fine. He wasn't as inventive as I would like him to be, but I don't necessarily want to place that at the feet that Kelly didn't give him enough to work with.
That's
just,
not at all what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I actually think that the writing is what makes this issue special in some way. Like it
Sure.
elevates it because it's doing the interesting stuff.
Yeah. Like I think from a narrative standpoint, you know, this is a far more interesting dynamic than, say, and this is not to criticize the from the last run, but like this is far more interesting than Spidey versus Tombstone, and yet like I feel like that was more visually arresting than Hellgate. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, it's almost like Romita was like, oh, all right, I'm gonna do a middle-aged guy. All right, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like I didn't. There was nothing about Hellgate's powers and movements that seemed kind of unique or different or special, even though there was complete latitude to do that here, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Spidey kind of gets the big moment with the web bomb. You know, like Hellgate gets that sort of launch himself as like a missile at like the villains, but like, and it's handled interestingly, and it's sort of like, it's not bombastic. It like, so it kind of catches Spider-Man off guard. It's almost like a blink and you miss it, and like, oh my god, he already killed all these guys. But like, again, and we criticize, I think, the end of the previous issue. Like Hellgate didn't feel all that scary to me, like, you know, like in this issue, in a way that like Moreland felt terrifying when we encountered him for the first time. And it could be just that I've seen JR do the unstoppable, you know, the kind of casually unstoppable force before. Yeah.
Now, something that did try to kind of, I think, sell Hellgate's threat level was actually Felicia in this comic. What was your takeaway on that? Like some of her narrative during this fight scene?
It's really weird and uncharacteristic for her, which Spidey points out. He's like, I've never seen Felicia this scared, which, you know, is saying something given, you know, you want to factor in her whole history and, you know, like the Owl Octopus War and like the damage that did to her and how traumatized she was, you know, in the kind of aftermath of that, where she was like nearly killed. But it's the sort of like interesting thing that she can clearly see something about Hellgate that Spidey can't, and we, the reader, can't see. She describes like, you know, something pouring off of him. Like, I don't know, like if it's the cosmic radiation that is kind of implied about him. And then she has this one line that she says, like, everything is so dark, as if like she's like seeing the future or something like that. Yeah. I don't really know what to take away from this. My brain goes to like, are we going to learn more about like the nature of her bad luck powers and maybe expand on that in some way? But like, I mean, it's very strange.
I was gonna say, she does have a solo series kicking off in a month. So, you know, like maybe it's just a bridge to that, you know?
Yeah, but whatever it is, it's very weird. And it implies that there's something more to Hellgate than even we are able to comprehend. And I just want to know where she got those Uzis from. You know, like that to me was very strange.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she just kind of pulled out a couple of semi-automatics, which, like you do, I guess, in New York. Speaking of like random people coming to New York, we have Hermes, which, I mean, you know, I obviously recognized him from the backup in issue 1, but we didn't get a name in issue 1, did we?
I think we at least got his last name in issue 1, but I'm not entirely certain now that you're putting me on the spot here. But
okay. But any thoughts on the Hermes scene here? I mean, like, again, like it felt very intentional, even if it didn't really advance anything.
Sure. You know, there's a few things that I'm interested in about Hermes that kind of folds into like kind of a larger understanding of Hellgate. And if there's one takeaway from the backup in issue 1, you know, it's a group of people in the desert, you know, looking at like a plateau that, you know, Hermes, you know, suggests is a, you know, like a petrified tree, which is definitely a thing that exists, although not on that scale, you know, in the desert. And I've gone to the national park celebrating sort of petrified trees. But it ends with one of those so-called like tree stumps splitting open and revealing Hellgate. And, Hermes is like, I've been right the whole time. The tree, the heartbeat. And that's the thing he keeps saying over and over again. And that's not really revisited here. But I have some thoughts about it, which I'll save for when we talk about some theories around like, what this might actually be. But I also found it interesting that, on a base level, he's kind of calling all of these different superhero teams to just see who can come and potentially stop Hellgate. And he's called, the Avengers and the FF, and, as is usual in a solo book, they don't show up,
Right. Yeah.
But I did find the most interesting line, I think, and it's really emphasized because it's repeated twice in the comic. So they want you to pick up on this, is he says like, plus like I tried calling like Captain Universe, who I believe is Fred in this timeline. Which, by saying in this timeline, it suggests that there are multiple timelines of some type,
right.
That we're going to be probably visiting in this story. And I did a big search, for Captain Universe and Fred, and there's no hit. I'm not aware of any Captain Universe being Fred. Are you, Mark?
No.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
The last time we saw Captain Universe in the 616 was actually when the Omni Force or whatever, the Unipower or whatever it is, came to Eddie Brock in the King in Black storyline, which he then like fashioned into an axe, right, to take out Null, this sort of opposite of the light universe force in the Marvel universe. And that's the last we've seen of it. It left Eddie Brock behind, but Eddie is definitely no Fred. And unless we're about to learn something very different about Eddie Brock.
Is he Freddie Brock?
Yeah. But we do know Venom is going to be involved in this upcoming cosmic story, at least based on the cover of 975, which features both Venom and Carnage on the cover. So I don't know, maybe there's a relationship there, but I don't know. Does Fred, like, other than Boomerang, does it call anything to mind? Like, are we going to see a Captain Universe Boomerang?
I was going to say, the only Fred I know of in the Spider-Man mythos is Fred Myers.
Yeah.
So, and he's been, let it be said, he was unceremoniously killed by Nick Spencer, which I guess, Nick Spencer felt he had the right to kill him since he kind of created the modern Fred Myers as we know him. So, who's to argue? But at the same time, like, could this be how when he died, did he like become one with the cosmic force or something like that?
Actually, Mark, I've got bad news for you because in an issue of Zombiotes during Blood Hunt, Fred Myers came back from the dead as a zombie and then was healed of zombieism, and he is currently alive in the 616 universe. A sort of underread miniseries, Zombiotes, turned out to be a Superior Foes of Spider-Man sequel series and is actually quite good. And saw Overdrive bringing him back.
How do you read all this stuff?
Marvel Unlimited, man. I read every book they publish. It's just my go to sleep material. Yeah.
That is absolutely insane to me, Dan, but that's okay. We'll put that aside. Anyway.
You're forgiven for not reading that. They should have marketed it better, but it was basically a Superior Foes sequel.
Because I was gonna say I read Blood Hunt, anyway,
or whatever it was. Maybe it was King in Black. I forget what a big event symbiote of. Oh no, it was Venom War was Zombiotes. Title.
Yeah, I did not read that either. There was so many tie-ins to Venom War, and I was just like, no, I'll just read the main one and the Spider-Man one. Anywho. Do we want to, we're about to get into the highly speculative portion of the show.
Let me finish off something really quickly about the actual content in this book before we get to the speculating. I really liked the end of the book where you've got this sort of like freezing of Hellgate, because it plays into the sort of typical Spider-Man structure of a, sort of almost all the way, back to Ditko, which is like, you fight this thing, you fail, and then Spider-Man uses science on a second pass in order to defeat him. And that's exactly what happens with Morlun, right? You've got the unstoppable force, and Juggernaut too, right? And you use some element that pre-exists, whether it's radiation poisoning in your blood or loose concrete, and science doesn't work on this guy, right? And to me, I thought that was another way of kind of like using the standard formula nature of this particular issue to, again, subvert our expectations of like who Hellgate is and how he operates. And that it's minor, but I thought it was meaningful in that it draws a direct comparison to something like Coming Home.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that, Dan.
Yeah, that's fine. You want to get into speculating, because you kind of threw it out there during your recap that like, oh, Dan, you're going to tell me that this is some alt universe Captain America, and I don't know, but like that's kind of where my brain was going.
Again, like not to keep making the same joke over and over, Dan, but like I really thought when I made that comment in the recap, I was like, oh, I'm sure there was something in a solicitation where it was like, and a character from a universe that you haven't seen in 30 years shows up, and Dan would be like, oh, of course, this is from the MC2 with Mayday, and it's Captain America, and I'm like, okay, if you say so, Dan. I mean, that's my invitation.
Yeah, no, perfect. You nailed me. Yeah.
When you get like really into
the sort of like the red string on a chalkboard. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You sound so mad at me. I'm sorry.
We are years past me getting mad at you for getting angry at me for speculating wildly.
There you go. But no, but like I have no theories, because I as longtime listeners of this show will note, I hate guessing because I'm always wrong. The only time I was kind of right was when I was like, Kindred is Harry Osborn, and I was like right for like half of the run, but then Nick Spencer was like, aha, I'm gonna drag this out and swerve you in a way you never saw coming and never wanted to see coming.
You're still kind of right, I think. I could still don't really know how to explain that, even though I think I spent hours explaining it.
Exactly. But no, I mean, it clearly feels like this new player character that shows up is some kind of Captain America variant, but like there's a 2099 series coming out soon. Could it be a 20? But I don't think it's a 2099 version. I didn't recognize it, and you don't recognize it. So
yeah, I mean, except for that shield is iconic, right? Like the circles within circles is like, I mean, look, JR could have drawn whatever, and we could be overreading it, but like. You draw something like that in a Marvel comic, it's coded as Captain America or some variant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I guess I meant like I didn't recognize the version of it per se. It could be a completely new version for all we know.
Well, for what it's worth, like on the fandom wiki, which is pretty good about being accurate on these things, they don't have it labeled as any pre-existing thing, and I definitely didn't recognize it as some pre-existing thing. But there are, I think that Fred line from Hermes is really, specific, right? It's saying this timeline. So like, and that character is coded in the same way that Hellgate is, with the sort of cracks, the heat radiating cracks all over their body. Yeah. So wherever this person's from, like they have some relation to Hellgate, right? I mean, like the implication of the scene itself is that they're part of some team that's communicating through radio or listening to shock jocks or whatever they're doing. And that's what it seemed like to me in that scene. It's like early morning and they're listening to someone about the slime or whatever. I don't know, New York City radio.
I want to know that timeline's Howard Stern.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And
it's like, what do your boobs look like? No, sorry.
They're like, oh, another night wasted on night patrol. like word comes in about Hellgate and they run off, right? So like,
right.
There's some connection there, and the fact that they're being introduced in the same issue, so. But then you look at Hellgate and you look at this like person with Captain America. Maybe this is an alt Avengers, like Hellgate could be very Thor oriented. And then that got me thinking about Steel Silk, right? Like that, maybe there's a Spider-Man who is Iron Man variant, right? And they're steel instead of iron and it's Steel Silk. We'll find out, like I kind of hope that's not the case, I hope it's a little more interesting than that, but like,
I think you're wrong there, Dan. I got to be honest.
You think that I'm actually on the money?
Yeah. No, I think you're wrong.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, then great.
Yeah. I was gonna say this feels about as like accurate as like, oh, it's the bandages and the red and the greens and the purples.
This is not a theory that I'm like buying it into, but like,
sure.
Like given that there are some connecting elements between like the sort of like
right.
Asgardian god looking guy and a Captain America adjacent guy and this repeated word Steel Silk. I don't know.
It's just strange to me, even though like Hellgate clearly looks and sounds like they could be from Asgard, like all the same, like I'm just not getting that vibe from it.
Yeah.
Like, this just feels like completely out of place and out of time, not like within the 616 rational world of being, I guess. I don't know.
I guess what I'm implying is it's not 616. It's some other thing where the Asgardian timeline got so screwed up that it resulted in whatever Hellgate is. There's some interesting stuff too, like Hellgate, describes like traveling there and that it's like against the rules to do so, and and the sort of like foretold alliance that like some fortune teller or whatever has been like prophesizing about. Like it's all very weird and interesting, and you're right, I don't think that I'm right about this, but like the Captain America thing is interesting, and the idea that like there is a Captain Universe across multiple timelines, as this guy implies. And then we're dealing with like this kind of cosmic tree in the middle of the desert that's been frozen over. And that immediately makes me think of like Yggdrasil, the sort of like Norse tree that's at the center of the universe that connects, all the different realms together. And so, when I see giant tree, like ancient giant tree, that's where my brain goes, because that's also connected to the cosmos. So I'm spitballing right now. And I also don't think that this is like connected to the Wells symbology stuff. It could be, maybe this is the way that they close off Paul or something like that. But I don't get that vibe here.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I say that because they've said in interviews that they've had plans for Paul all along and that they're playing it out. That could be a complete bluff, but and I would assume it is. But yeah.
The plan is he's the man in the chair for Mary Jane's Venom.
Yeah. So okay, the only other thing I want to throw in here that comes directly from this run is Dr. OM, right? The head of Rand.
Right. Yeah.
We know that she's doing something that's causing her to come into work late on a regular basis and be tired. And she talks about pulling all-nighters, right? Could this person on the motorcycle be Dr. OM and be the reason why she's showing up like late to work and has sort of this other life that she's living?
I don't know if it's Dr. OM on the bike, but like I don't discredit that she could be involved in this somehow. That's a pin I would, hold on to here.
I'll get a little nibble on that one.
I'm not ready to concede that OM is the hero or whatever you want to say.
Did you read the hero as male or female? I'm curious.
I saw male. But,
I saw female, so that's interesting. It does seem very like and I just read it for the first time about an hour ago. So
yeah, I could have just misread it. Though,
yeah,
man. I mean, like my own like lens could have, looked at that the wrong way.
What do you think about JJJ, just to kind of cap this off? Because this seemed like the strangest inclusion to me in this book.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what I said earlier, like it's clearly intentional, but and like you said, like from the timestamp to everything about it was clearly intentional, and yet I can't for the life of me figure out what exactly they're going for here. It felt very random, but all the same, I'm like, you know, we haven't had a good Jonah story in forever. I mean, you know, 800 maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, we're coming up on 200 issues since Jonah had something really to do. I'm like, I don't care how it happens. Put that genie back in the bottle. Like, I need this character fixed. Right. I mean, well, look, I'm not trying to. Now I'm going to speculate, but like, you're either putting that genie back in the bottle or you're killing Jonah.
Yeah.
I don't really advocate for, but it's like at this point, what else can you do with this character? And like, you know, not to be that person, but like there was kind of, I don't know, it felt kind of foreboding at the same time. Like, why are we looking at Jonah right now? And like, it's kind of like, you know, I'm starting my day, and you know, like the way the text message was reading, it felt like a trap. I don't know. Like,
yeah, sure.
That
like Peter, like, let's hang out, you know, like, like, I mean, and the time is weird. Like, I mean, he could have had those messages like, and just checked them for the first time then, you know, but like Peter is currently engaged in a big battle. If those texts are like meant to be immediate, then something weird is going on there. Although I don't think that that's the case. I think he's probably just checking messages from Peter checking on him in some way. But yeah, I mean, even the whole like line about like the sun coming up on the wrong side of the horizon is a sort of like the world is about to get turned upside down, and him looking over like headlines and correcting, like he's looking back fondly on his previous life kind of thing, and the dying era of newspapers. Like it goes out of its way to say like the final 12 newspapers that exist in, you know, in the country, you know, and like, so he's seeing this sort of like dawning of or like dying of one age and birth of another kind of thing. I'm definitely overreading it, but I think that's what you're getting at when you said it's kind of foreboding.
He's getting a text about a potential fake college application about a no. I don't know if you're following where I'm going.
Oh yeah, no, that's something I missed and just saw like one a skeet about.
Okay,
yeah.
That is my third New York City mayoral joke of the evening, folks. So I'll call it.
I mean, I don't think we're getting like an on the waterfront or I cover the waterfront issue next issue, but I do wonder if he will like find himself maybe like misreading Peter's text, trying to meet up with him and like getting caught up between Peter and Hellgate or something like that. Yeah. I mean, I could very easily see that happening. But again, like, did this need to be in this issue? Maybe we'll find out next issue and it will make total sense. But within reading this, it's like, why is this here? So Mark, do you want to give the first grade on this one?
Yeah, I'm going to give this a B-. I enjoyed it. It has its flaws, more so on the visual side to me, but like, I don't know. Like, I thought this, I am intrigued by Hellgate. I want to see where this goes next. Like, I'm not like, oh God, here we go. So B-.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this too. And I was actually a little bit lower, but I think I'm going to go with a B-. You kind of talked me up into it. I originally was going to give this a C+, which is a sort of role reversal for us here on the show. I'm still intrigued, but I still felt this one was a little bit like flabby around the edges in terms of its like cleanliness as a crafted narrative versus what we were getting in the first arc of this title.
Yeah, which means if you read it again, you'll give it a B, just to kind of be more up to form here. All right. Well, That brings us to the end of this episode, but we want to thank you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of the Amazing Spider Talk. This podcast exists because of the support of our listeners on Patreon, where for only $4.99 a month, the cost of a new comic, you can help support our show's existence while getting early episodes, including these reviews, the same week the comics release. All of the unreleased episodes of the complete season 7 of our show, exclusive artwork, and a ton of other bonuses.
Yeah, if you value smart comics criticism and historical analysis, we hope you'll consider supporting us on Patreon. What we do on the show is admittedly niche. It is very niche. Still, if you find our Spider-Man commentary and community valuable, we can only continue doing what we do with your support on Patreon. It's really, really helpful to us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to everyone who supports us and our work. If you want to join their ranks, please go to amazingspidertalk.com and click the Patreon button to sign up and join our club.
So, Mark, until Peter Parker wields a sword called the Lightbringer, sleeps with Aunt May, and together defeat the threat of the White Walkers, what's our motto?
With great podcast saith, there must also come thou dust. The Amazing Spider Talk.